Hello everyone! But I did want to try and see if I can get this application that I'm working on just enough so that I can start using it. So I do I have a weekly mob programming group that I run for people who've taken my classes, which I'll be at some point opening up to more than just the people who've taken my my classes, but right now it's quite enough to keep me busy. And so managing that is it's a lot. It's a lot of just annoying little things. So I have to check, like, have I filled the class? Who's signed up? I have to send them Zoom links, and then afterwards, I basically want to send them links to the recording. I need to figure out if they've been part of the group before. Then there's no additional setup they need to do unless we're switching to a different code repository that we're going to work on. So all that kind of stuff is a bit of just half a dozen little details, and it's just annoying. And so why not create a little app that sets this stuff up? So that's the app that we'll be continuing to work on today. All right, so one of the things I did offline, because it's one of those, I'm worried about doxing myself as well as worried about revealing secret keys and things like that. So one of the requirements for this application is, like any application, you're going to have to log in. And I was thinking, well, what am I going to use for logging, for login authentication? And I realized, well, everybody who is part of a mob needs to have a GitHub account, because that's how we use a tool called MobSH. And that tool is for basically doing handover in remote mobs, and it uses basically Git and GitHub. So it pushes stuff, the stuff people are working on, into a branch, and then pushes that to GitHub, and then the next person whose turn it is basically does a pull down, and MobSH sort of wraps that in a nice thing. Hey, ForestSoft. Yes. Well, thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's nice to be streaming a little bit more. I'm trying to get into a somewhat more regular schedule. So MobSH, since it relies on Git and GitHub, although I guess you could use it with GitLab, but I use GitHub. Since I'm going to require people to have access to GitHub, I'm going to use GitHub OAuth 2 to authenticate people. So sort of kill two birds with one stone, because eventually I want to automatically, people who sign up for a mob programming session, I want to automatically make sure they're linked up and have access to be able to push to the repository that we'll work on. But right now, again, I'm like trying to do what is the minimal I can implement that gets me something that starts being useful to me. So anyway, so I did the OAuth stuff in the application offline yesterday, and I love how easy it is. I remember the days when this stuff was non-trivial, but now all that I have to do in order to allow people to log in through OAuth is basically add this dependency, the Spring Boot Starter OAuth 2 client. Once you've got that, then it's a matter of just doing some configuration. So I've got my client ID and client secret that the OAuth 2 needs. And I had to figure out where to put my client ID and client secret. So there's a file that used to be, and I forget which version it changed. Was it 2.2 or 2.3? So it used to be that it would read a file called .springboot application DevTools application properties or something like that in your home directory. they moved that, so now it has to be in a .config Spring Boot directory. So finally figured out where that goes. And that way, when I'm running locally on my machine, I don't have to accidentally, or I won't accidentally, or much less likely accidentally reveal my client ID and client secret stuff. Because now that's in a file that is not part of the project, so it won't get accidentally committed. But then when I deploy this on something like Heroku, I can go in and set the environment variables directly there. So basically, the client ID and client secret are kept secret. So once I set that up, then that's pretty much it. Like everything else is just handled by the Spring Boot, Spring security libraries, which is really nice. So what I've been just playing around with otherwise is just making sure the application works. So I'm already logged into GitHub, so it already basically knows who I am. Yeah, so environment variables are used when I deploy onto something like Heroku. I can set those. But the nice thing about having the Spring Boot DevTools file is like it's much easier for me to manage. So that combination's worked really well. Yeah, everybody always falls back to environment variables. Yep. Yeah, and secrets getting, like when I was working at Apple, we were working on a next-gen cloud platform, which was not using Kubernetes at the time. I was using a homegrown thing. And basically how we injected secrets was we injected it into environment variables, because, yeah, everybody reads those. So let me close this tab. Hold on, I want to make sure that when I was testing this out, I had it display like information that it got from GitHub, which included my email address. I don't want to, even though my email address isn't terribly private, I don't want to dox myself. So hold on a second, let me check something. Okay. So this is the dashboard. So if it's not been too bad. I don't think I mean, at worst I could always rotate the client secret. It's not the end of the world. My email address, I'm not terribly concerned about either. So it's just, why make it worse? Yeah, there's all sorts of great secret stuff using Vault or Kubernetes secrets, or Kubernetes can use Vault and all sorts of stuff. I generally deploy onto Heroku because I don't want to deal with all that crap, and so it's just easy. Yeah, exactly for us. It's not terribly easy. I mean, honestly, I've had this email address for what, 15 years. I get a tremendous amount of spam, so a little bit more spam is probably not going to be noticeable. All right, so what I'm displaying here is just more sort of some debugging information. Thumang! Welcome. You've hit my coding stream. I'm planning on doing some music this weekend, assuming I'm not too put out by my second vaccine shot. So what this is showing is so this 382660 comes from GitHub. I believe it's an identifier that would not change, whereas, for example, the username you could change. In fact, one of these days I will swap it with Ted M. Young, but whatever. And these principal authorities come from the security stuff, so I'm just a user, and not much there. So yeah, so like it was, other than just making sure I had the all the things I needed, it was basically add the dependency to the POM file, set up on GitHub that this app MobOrg is registered, and everything else just worked. So what it looks like if you sort of log in for the first time, let's open a private window. Basically, it takes you to GitHub to sign in. I'm not going to sign in because that'll be annoying and require me to go get my phone for second factor authentication. But basically, that's what it does. And then eventually, it'll redirect back to the front page. I guess I could log out, so I can go to by default logout is an endpoint that is provided by Spring Security. So I can go there and I can log out. And then basically I can log back in using GitHub. That redirection I have to fix because I don't have a formal login page, but now I'm back logged in. So if I actually, let me log out again. If I log out, and then I go back to the home page, because I'm still logged into GitHub, the logout doesn't quite do what you think it might do. But honestly, this is fine for this application. This is totally fine. Why am I zoomed in though? That's better. So this is what the application looks like when it's empty. And so this is tracking my the mob programming sessions, what I'm calling huddles, that I lead on a weekly basis. So we'll call this one mob number 5, which I am having one tomorrow at 9 a.m. So if I schedule it, now it appears in the schedule, and then I can click through to it and see the detail. That current size is just a lie, but the date and time are correct. Yeah, so the reason why I used the word huddle is because the word session was the other possibility, a mob programming session. And session is such an overloaded term in so many ways that I wanted to find another term. And the grumpy game dev suggested huddle. It's like, oh, I like that. So huddle is like, once you know what it means, there's no confusion as to what you're talking about. And so in the code, I've basically shifted all things over to use the term huddle. And in fact, I've started to create a little ubiquitous language. Your program teacher teaches you to use German words. Well, that's a good way to go. So huddle, schedule. We don't say create an event. We say schedule an event. And the stuff I need to figure out is this, which is user versus participant. So now that I've got the login stuff and authentication, now I can sort of focus on thinking about that. Oh, and by the way, in case you're interested, so this project is open source, as well as you can use FluBits, so you can actually look at the code while I'm editing it live here on the stream. Yeah, there's German is probably a great language for that. Excuse me. All right, so where we are is that's where we are. We probably need to provide a link back to the dashboard, but that's fine. So huddles exist. They get identifiers. They have some attributes. I can schedule new ones. So one of the things I was thinking of is sort of this idea of I want to get to, what they kids call these days, MVP, right? Minimal viable product. And so I thought, well, I could sidestep having to figure out how to handle users that are not me by allowing me to just add participants manually. So I thought I might do that. From the user standpoint, so these are sort of participant stories, features. I hate using the word stories when these aren't really stories. So, so I need to figure out the language for this. So I think I'm going to reserve the word user for a logged in, authenticated user, mainly because that's what I get from Spring. So if we look at, why the heck is this dialog so big? So what I get is I basically get the authentication principal, which is an OAuth 2 user. And since that's a user, that's what I'm going to use as a user. So I've been using the word participant to refer to someone who is participating or has participated in a mob. So let's go update our ubiquitous language. Who has, I'm going to say authenticated. And they're going to do that via GitHub. And so where it gets a little tricky, confusing, is someone, I'm not going to currently worry about some random person off the street basically logging into the system using their GitHub credentials. So putting that aside, do I refer to someone who has logged in, authenticated with the system, right? So I have a user for them, but has not registered for any particular mob, so they've never participated in a mob. I think I'm just going to treat them as a participant who's never participated. I don't know yet if I need sort of some term referencing a non-participant, so registered in some, and it's the registration. So yeah, but it is different from user, yes, because mainly from an object point of view and a naming point of view, I need to have some other name than user, because I'm not going to be storing users in the database. I'm going to be storing participants. Participants belong to huddles. Well, actually, they don't belong to. There's a one-to-many relationship between one-to-many, which could be 0. And now I feel like I should be drawing this. Yeah, language is really important. The whole idea of ubiquitous language comes from domain-driven design. And if you're going to have anything, especially this kind of stuff, because so many terms are so overloaded, and unless you're really clear about what do we mean by this term in the context that we're working in, people can come in with their own assumptions that may lead people to write code that's not great, that makes certain assumptions that are simply wrong. So let's see if my visualization tool works. Yeah, exactly, Farsoff. It's once, I mean, heck, even for sometimes, small projects, what do you mean by rule? What do you mean by user? What do you mean by session, right? All right, so we're saying that participant so participant is 1 to 0 or many huddles. One of the things that participants have is a one-to-one relationship with user. There's probably something around, yeah, so the user is the OAuth user. Right, the principal basically, yeah. I'm gonna continue to use the word user because that's the name of the object that I'm dealing with. I can always change it later. So I don't at this point need to get sidetracked by me as the admin. So I'm off, somewhere here. So I'm the admin or mob manager. I have some relationship to the principal because everything, the way you log into the system is through a principal. But I'll deal with that later. I don't need to figure that out right now. Because again, right now I am focused on just getting participants into a huddle. Now, if I'm manually adding participants, can I create the participants using their, yeah, I already have their GitHub username. Okay, so let's go back here. Mapped to 0 huddles. There's admin, mob manager. All right, so let's go take a look at Huddle for a second. Let's see what we got there. So we got the name of the huddle, which has turned out to be somewhat confusing, but I'll worry about that later. Right now, it's just a label for which mob it is. The date and time is much more important because only one of those can occur at any time. So I think what I then want to do next is add participants. Do I have a participant yet? No, I do not. So I currently have ways of creating huddles. I have an in-memory huddle repository that I'm going to pretty soon want to turn into a real thing to store in a real database. The huddle ID is currently not final because the ID is assigned from the database. And so that's why it's not final. I tend towards having the database assign IDs, even though I know that there's reasons and good reasons to do it where you basically create an ID before you create the object. But there you go. And this is primitive obsession. Eventually this will be something else, but for now it's an int. Although I guess I could put in, no, the huddle ID is a value object, so yeah, what I want to be able to do from the UI is when I am looking at a huddle, I want to be able to, well, display the participants. So I want this stuff to be real and not fake. So let's do that. So from a test standpoint, what I want this page to do is to show participants. That's not a new endpoint. Let's do a commit, which was added Spring Security and OAuth to support for authenticating via GitHub. Okay, so now what tests is this? So this is a Huddle service schedule test, Huddle service find test. So we want Huddle participants test. All right, hold on. I need to do something. So let's go make a live template for that. Live templates. Create a live template. Imports AssertJ static assert class. So that's what I want. That goes in Java. All right, it was one of those. Anyway, okay. So the test I want to write is, I guess I can use zombies here. So zombies is the 0-1 many boundary interface exceptions acronym. Is it an acronym? Yes, it's an acronym because we pronounce it. And so this one is basically when a huddle is created, there are no participants. Do I need to test this through the service? What is the service? The service is just going to... eventually I'll need a factory for huddles. I'll have to think about what the aggregate is here. That'll be interesting. All right, because it's a one-to-many mapping, but the mapping is sort of reversed. So who owns the list is the huddle. So okay, so huddle new. That I like how it took the name from the name, but I'm just going to call it huddle. Well, we can say two things. One is number registered. I think that's really participant count or participant number of participants. Let's do that. So let's assert that that is 0. And huddle participants. This will return. Right now, I'll just return a list of participant. And that should be empty. All right, so this will fail because this will return 0, but this will return a null, and that will fail. So let's run our tests. Just going to run our domain tests. And it fails as expected, so we'll go fix that. We'll just return an empty list for now, and that should pass. All right, easy peasy. So now Huddle has one participant. I'm always having trouble spelling this word because it's got that ICIP, which is just throwing me. Huddle's one participant. Something like that. So here we'll create a huddle. And we'll need to create a participant. No! I probably should refactor this. GitHub username, email, Discord, false. I'll probably need to pull this into dedicated class to make it easier to use in tests. So huddle register. I'm having one of those moments where, you think about a word a lot, focus on it, and now it just seems wrong. That's where I am. The only other term I can think of is sign up, but I think register is sufficient. So go ahead and we'll create that. That's going to do a void, so it's not going to do anything. And now what we can assert is that the huddle number registered is 1, and huddle participants contains only participant. Now that's going to require us to implement an equals method on participant. Currently participant is a record, so the default equals is created. I have a feeling I'm going to be switching away from records. Oh, wait a second. This is, oh crap. I've goofed. This participant is a participant view. Wait, is this even in the right package? Who's using this? I think this was intended to be a view. So let's do this. Let's do that. Rename the file. And now we've got 5 problems. So we'll need to create a class because now huddle doesn't work. All right, so let's go create this. This goes in the domain, and this will be a full-fledged class. But not in test. Why? Why are you putting it in test? I don't understand you. Okay, so let's go create a constructor. GitHub username, email, Discord username, and this was new to mob. Bing. Yeah. Oh, I'm using Java 16. Yeah, because I'm on the bleeding edge on this app. I'm using Java 16 and 2.5.0 release candidate 1 of Spring Boot. I should probably add that to a README. Yeah, so Java version 16. This description is wrong. Mob organization, mobbing organization manager. There we go. Uh, 13 is not 16, no. Yeah, mainly because I'm using records. So yeah. Okay, what's going on here? We don't need that. This. Don't need that. All right, so let's run our tests. Okay, good. So that's failing. So let's go to number registered. This should no longer track it this way. This should just return. Actually, we'll leave it that way for a second. Participants, add participant. We'll create that field. It's hilarious sometimes what IntelliJ suggests. Why did it suggest that? All right, and so then this is participants size. So now the test will fail because we're not returning the list of participants. And it does. Oh, right, and I was going to go to participant because I need to implement, well, first of all, I need to implement, create a field for that. And eventually these will not be strings anymore, and they won't all be final, but for now that's fine. I need to implement an equals based on GitHub username. Sure, that'll definitely be unique, but I shouldn't use that as an ID. Eventually, I'll need an ID on participant, but for now, this will do fine. So let's create an equals where the only thing we care about is that, and yes, it will not be null. Okay. All right, so this test will still fail because participants isn't including anything. Now we'll go have it return the copy of participants. Now it should pass. And it does. Okay, good. I don't feel the need to add a many test. If I add one, there's probably some tests where I can't add multiple, but I think I've got a to do for that. So let's go to that, make sure I have that. So I'll need a test for this precondition. I guess I could store them as a set. That feels like a little bit of bike shedding, so I'll skip that. All right. Let's do a commit. Added domain participant and renamed view to view of it to participant view. Participants can now register with Huddle. Hey, Lexlers. Silly meetings. All right, so let's push that. What issues have you found? Nitpicky. Yeah, okay, fine. I don't really care. I know they're unused. Commit anyway. I don't know that that's true. All right, so we can now add participants to a huddle. So now I'd like to display them. That is in the huddle detail view. First off, if you just run the MobOrg application, assuming all your tests pass, that should just work. I was just thinking, would the security be a problem? No, as long as you authenticate with GitHub, it should work. Because right now I have the application is defined that it returns to localhost. So where localhost is wherever you are. All right, so we got this. We got participants. I'm going to turn off Tailwind, just because I don't want to. Tailwind, when you use Tailwind, like I'm using it here, it basically does let me turn off basically all of the defaults you get, because it assumes you're going to add those all back. So I lose anything around H3 versus H1 and all that kind of stuff. So what I want to add here is I want to add the participants. Do I want to write for a test for that? So this is from the Huddle detail view. So let's go to controller, dashboard, right. So Huddle detail. Oh, I was going to look at the Huddle detail page just to see what I can just preview it. Yeah. So that's it in all its ugliness. That's fine. So let's, all right, because I turned off the Tailwind, that's what I wanted to see. Okay, great. So what I want here for the list of participants, what do I want for each participant? Name, GitHub username, that's it, maybe? So we want a list of participants. How do we want to display that? Do you just want to iterate through and display it as a bunch of paragraphs? That's fine for now. So I want to iterate through Huddle Participants. So I basically just want a list of participants. I display it as a div? Sure, let's do it as a div. Oops. So this is going to be a th. I know how to do radio buttons. So I've been working, one of my one of my many back burner projects is basically creating a time leaf cookbook for exactly the situation I'm in right now. It's like, how the heck do I loop through a list to display something again? Because unless you're doing it like all the time, you forget, right? We forget because we don't access the information. And when you access it, then you remember it for a while, but then you forget it again. So it is I just started my first job and feeling terribly overwhelmed. You know, even for someone like me who's been doing this for a long time, whenever you're in a new, especially a new job, you're exposed to so much and you're having to learn so much. It can definitely feel overwhelming. So hang in there. It will get better. You'll still have the feelings of overwhelm, but try not to stress too much about it because there's just no way to absorb it all at once. So one of the things I look at when I'm looking at documentation for Spring and Spring Boot and things like that is I try to, as much as possible, go to the Spring IO, right, the primary source. Their guides, though, sometimes are like a little bit off target, and this is something I hope that I will eventually do differently once I get to my Spring courses. My courses on Spring, not my Spring courses, is sort of different, sort of plug and play kind of thing. So one of the examples they use, I went to this when I was trying to figure out the GitHub OAuth, is that they're using like jQuery and JavaScript on the front end. And I'm like, why are you confusing things with that? Like, I get it, but like it adds confusion and adds more complexity than just like, how do I use this with just sort of straightforward front end? So if I do a th each here on participants, I always forget that this is outside, and it's like this. I don't know why I can't remember that. So this will create a div for, let's just have a span. And this will be th text, participant, name. And then we'll have a span. And this is going to be participant, what did I say, name and GitHub username? GitHub username. That looks right. Let's go fix it. This is GitHub username. All right. This test is getting too large, so let's split out the detail view, because I'm probably going to split the controller too. So let's move the detail view. Yeah, let's move the detail view to a new test. See, I really wish IntelliJ, and I keep meaning to file an issue. I wish IntelliJ had a way to like say, these are test methods. They're fairly independent, if not completely independent, from the class they're contained in. Can I just move this? Because I have to make it static, move it, you know, can I do this by refactoring and not a cut and paste? That's what I would like. because I do this a lot. All right, so let's create a new dashboard huddle view tests. And why is name? Oh, okay. So let's run all y'all tests. Oh. Why did those fail? Oh, right. Probably security. 403. Right. I should have run those tests earlier. Because those are going to require a mock user. I forget how to do it. Oh, and this can go on the test class. Well, that's what I thought. But it's... So what dependency does it think it's in? Spring security test. Do I not get that? Do I not get that as part of... I wonder if I just haven't pulled in the whole Spring security because I only pulled in the OAuth. So I wonder if I need to pull that in separately. All right, hold on. Was that an for something you're dealing with, Lexlers, or in sympathy with what I'm dealing with? So this will be Spring boot security, starter security. Oh, sympathy, yeah. So I think this will bring in the tests stuff. That's interesting that this was insufficient. I guess it has a dependency on security, but wouldn't expose it to me. And so now I also need Spring security test. Do I not get that for free? I'll have to clean that up. All right, so now let's see if these tests work. Yeah, there's probably something special for OAuth. All right, so put the security stuff aside from the integration test point of view. We'll go ahead and go back to our other tests. Let me go actually. I'm gonna stick and ignore disabled. Figure out tests for OAuth 2 based security authentication. Okay. No, the mock MVC is already auto configured through the web MVC test. There's something else that I need to do, and I'm not gonna waste time on it because it's not right now. It's not important. All right, so other than those, everything else passes, which is fine. Okay, so what we want to do was display all the participants. So we have the dash huddle detail, right? So what we want to do is we want to put participants into the model. So let's go to our dashboard huddle view test. So we've got huddle. What we also want to make sure that's in there is right now list of participant view. Or should that just be in the huddle detail view? Actually, that should just be in the huddle detail view itself. So it'll be huddle participants. Yeah, that's what we want. Okay, so from a huddle, we need to create size. Do we need size in there? Let's just do list of participant view. Oh yeah, it's totally tempting to just, hey, let me just put all the code in the controller, why not? And that's where the refactoring really has to be an ingrained habit. Otherwise you will leave it at sort of the wherever it's convenient, yeah. This will be participant views. Go ahead and create not a field, introduce local variable. Topic. No. That's interesting. So it's either saying create a field. I don't want to create a field. I want to create a local variable. Why is it not giving me that option? Now, introduce local variable will be for the whole return, but that's not what I want. That's interesting. I had to force it, and I still don't get quite what I want. So what I want is huddle participants map stream map, and what I want to map it to is participant view from I'm not sure why it's confused. It should have known that it's participant view. Why wouldn't it figure that out? It's a list of participant views. Why wouldn't it figure? And these are a stream of participants. Oh, it might not have known the return value from that. All right. But then we just want to do it. Oh, no, we can do toList directly. When was this added? Was this added in 16? Yes, it was added in 16. Okay. Echo Strike. So I was just reading how much is relevant to me and how much is just y'all conversing. If you're doing TDD, you need to add a method to a service. Would I mock the call to the repository, or could you just call the service method and put the mock in during the refactoring step? You need to add a method to a service. Would I mock? So this method to the service, I'm assuming, uses the repository. I mean, it depends on the method that I'm adding. I mean, I tend not to use, I tend to use fakes from my repositories. So I basically create a like a fake or an in-memory repository, add the item directly to that, and then that's referenced in the test. Yeah, so I'm almost always passing in some kind of fake or similar into my services when the service gets created. I have such a test. So, in fact, it's not the view test. Where's my service test? So, for example, I've got my in-memory version of the repository, and the service takes a reference to that in-memory version. I add an item directly into the repository, and then I test my service method, which uses my in-memory version of the repository. So here I could stub the repository, or I could provide a fake, but I already need an in-memory version because I want to be able to use and interact with the application. So I don't want to involve a database just yet because I'm still trying to figure things out. So this is what I tend to do, is create an in-memory version that's actually kind of production. It's in the production code side, not on the test side. If I already had a real database and hooked up, then in here I'd be replacing the in-memory version with a fake, because it's really easy to work with. All right, so we've mapped our participants to participant views. We put that in here. That's all in there. And then here, we assert that, and we can also assert that the Huddle participant views, in this case, it should have none. I would want a separate test that tests to see that it has. Yeah, actually, this is in the wrong test. I need a new test. Okay. Detail view of existing huddle with one participant. Returns view huddle with participant view. This test name is too long, but I don't have time to make it shorter. So we'll create. Let's refactor this. How am I going to refactor this? Yeah, I need both of those. All right, I can't refactor that. I probably have to move to a builder pattern, but I'm not ready to do that just yet. So let's pull out this huddle. And on the huddle, we'll register a new participant. This is a bit annoying. GitHub. The rest I don't think I care about. Okay, is the plan to deprecate in-memory huddle repository eventually? Probably, or certainly it would not be the default one at startup, but I might choose to use that one if I'm doing some sort of more work where I don't want to get the database involved. I'm not worried about drifting because both the in-memory and the real one will still have to implement the huddle repository interface, and so I'm not concerned about that. Stringless Chan, I had an interesting discussion today with a colleague using a fake versus a stub when testing the service that calls the repo. One of the points raised, when we need the natural behavior of the repo, shouldn't we just move on to integration testing? It depends on what you're testing. Yeah, if you're testing database interactions, then you wouldn't be testing the service, you'd be testing the repository implementation directly. You can't just provide a stub, because usually what I'm testing requires something that has read-write capability. So that's the difference between a fake and a stub. A stub you only read from the code. The code under test only reads from it. With a fake, it can write to it and read from it, and so repository needs to implement that full interface. I generally, so like in this test, I'm sort of treating the in-memory repository in a very stub-like fashion because I'm pre-populating it with something. So I prefer to do it that way, so that the code that uses it in the normal fashion. If there was anything deeper, I probably wouldn't be writing a test against the service. What is it called when you don't actually run the save, but you just verify the correct stuff is passed to a save? That would be a spy. So spy looks at the methods that are called and what parameters are sent, which I generally do not do. I don't like behavioral tests like that. Okay, so we've got our huddle, we've registered a participant, we've saved it. Now we want to, on the huddle detail view, and I might be convinced that I could merge this with the prior test. This is huddle view. Where'd the dashboard controller go? I don't need the saved huddle, I just need to save it. And now I can just assert that the huddle view, participant views. I don't feel like I need to do much else than that. I tend to use test doubles that are basically mocks written by hand. Yeah, so I don't use the word mock except in a very, very specific case, which is something that can self-verify the things that a spy might verify. So what methods were called and what parameters. Otherwise, I use generically test doubles. And then if I'm going to use a test double, it's one of the 3 types that I talked about in my class. A dummy, which is not the case, a stub, which only returns information, and a fake, which can store and return information. So in this case, this huddle repository is serving as a fake, and then these are just actually real objects. And so I'm using a fake repository to store the information that gets returned through the controller. And so a test double may be as simple as a stub where it just returns a hard-coded value and you program it that way. Or it might be somewhat more sophisticated as in a fake. All right, so let's see if this test passes. I think I shouldn't be thinking, I should be knowing. So here, when we create the huddle detail view, we do convert it. Let's not do that. Let's just call this an empty list. And now then this test should fail. Not that test, this test should fail. Right, because we weren't adding it, so we expected 1 but was 0. So now we can go ahead and okay, so let's go back, no, not there, to the view, and let's undo this temporary change. So now that test should work. It should pass. And it does. Okay. So now we are loading participant views in our huddle detail. We're no longer getting it from participants, right? We're now getting it from huddle. And it's participant views. And the participant view is a record. Oh, but I didn't have a test for this. I should have had a test for this. Oh, right. IntelliJ doesn't recognize records as used inside TimeLeaf. Yeah, stubs are fine if the code under test doesn't have to write to it, and you just want to control what it returns. So, like stacking the deck in a card game. So new participant view. Do I need to write a test for this? This is almost direct translation, so I'm not going to do a test. Participant. Oh, participant doesn't have any methods on it. So our participant has a name, so public string name. And it has GitHub username. And eventually some of these will become types instead of primitives, but for now I don't need them. This Discord username. I'm not even sure I need that. So I'll leave it for now. Discord username. And okay. So now here I can return a new participant view. Name, email, nope, did that one already. Discord. Okay. Size, this seems to be problematic. Let's make that easy. So in our Huddle detail view, participant views size. Okay. So I realized that a bunch of the stuff I just wrote was not test driven because it's pretty much just copying information from one class to another. If I was concerned that I wouldn't see that easily through the UI, then I would write a test for it. But it's not even manipulating them, it's just copying them. So I am comfortable not test driving that because there's no logic to test. All right, so that all works. Let's run the application. What do I expect? I still expect because I don't have any way of registering the participants. I could register one somewhere. Maybe I should have written the add or register a participant first. Oh well. So let's do that. Let's do that. 4/30/2021. And here. All right, so that's good. And we don't see any participants, so that's good. Need on this page an add a register participant button, but I'm at the end of my time block. I still got a few minutes. Let's see how much I can get through. So let's do a commit Huddle view detail view now shows participants. Oh yeah, need to figure out testing integration testing and the OAuth to user principal is involved. So here we'll want to add and I guess I could put this on its own page, but it seems kind of convenient to have it here. So what we need is we'll need a form. And the th action will go to, where's that going to go to? I guess a register endpoint. But it's register for specific Huddle, do I put that under... So I put that at... No, I think that's fine. We'll just put it at register for now. Action equals that. Method is post. And th object is registration. The th is the time leaf template. So I'm using Spring Boot MVC with the time leaf templating engine. All right, so we'll need an object. And what information do we need for a participant? Right now, so th field, and there's a member of that registration. So this is going to be name, and I'll put this in a div. So we got name, we've got GitHub username, and I think everything else I'm just going to leave empty. That's interesting that they think name is valid. And I will need some kind of button. Margin top 3. Submit. Oops. Button? Yeah. Type is submit. And it's register participant. Okay. So this tells us what we need from the back end. And so now in the back end, this will need a new endpoint though, and I can't write a test for that endpoint. So I'm kind of stuck. So I can write it, I can sort of do middle in. I can write it and then worry about the configuration test. So let's do that. Let's pretend there's a method. What it'll do is it will take a registration form, and what we expect it to do is add it in. So what do we need? We'll need, oh, it's going to need the ID of the huddle. So we're going to need a hidden type equals number, and the th field is going to be huddle ID, value, is it th value? So th value, that's going to be coming from huddle ID. So that means I'll need to add that onto the huddle. So this way, when they submit the form and they say register this participant, we know which huddle they're registering for. I think this is a good stopping place. So what I'll do on the next stream, which might be tomorrow. I'm not sure. I've got a bunch of things I need to do before next week. But whenever we resume this, we'll continue. Hopefully I'll have figured out the security test stuff, and then we'll be able to write a test for this endpoint register. And then we'll be able to add some of this stuff and make sure that when it's submitted with the right information, that participant gets both, in this case, created new and added to the huddle. Sort of participant management, if they already exist and that kind of stuff, that's gonna wait. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, let me at least do a commit. Added form for registering a participant with a huddle currently assumes a new participant. Actually, it doesn't really matter, but whatever. Oh, good question. So participant is part of my domain, and I do not use getters and setters. I do not use getters and setters for methods on a domain object. There's only one place where I do that, and that's for an ID. But anything else, the information is owned by the object, and if you want to find out that information, you do a query. And so these look like getters, but putting get and set in front of it means something very different. It means I'm going to access information that you're storing, and I'm getting back an internal information. That's usually what people think about when they do development in Java. And I want to make sure that you're thinking about these names as queries and not as getters. So getters and setters are very invasive, whereas queries and commands are much more in, not just in the way I think about it, but other folks too, that you want to think about queries and commands. You have an object, and if you want information that it has, you query it. If you want to ask it to do something, you give it a command. So it's a little bit more than just noise. It, for me, is very much names are names influence how we think about things, and so by not having getters and setters, it hopefully has people think about them differently. That's just nice. It is a bit of noise, yes. Mainly getters and setters are a misuse of something that was not meant for humans to use. But as I say, that that horse has left the barn many years ago. Yeah, so yeah, Kotlin avoid the noise. Yeah, getters and setters were meant to be used by tools. So getters and setters started with the Java Bean specification, which came out in 1997, and were meant to be used by, at that point, GUI editing tools to figure out what properties were on components that you drag and drop onto the screen to create a UI. At some point, and one of these days I'll do the research and figure out when it happened, but probably around the Enterprise Java Bean days, people started using getters and setters by default in their code, but they were never meant for us to write. They were meant for tools to be able to use the naming patterns of get and set to figure out what information a data-only object had. So getters and setters are still used. I have them in my DTOs because those are pure data. But they shouldn't be used anywhere else, because we should be thinking about what are the commands and queries we want to use against an object, and leave getters and setters for things that are just data and have no behavior. If you do a search for getters and setters are evil, you'll find an article written by Alan Holob in 2003 where he talks about that stuff.